Hi friends, welcome to 2024. I can't even believe it. Another year has passed. Although I don't like New Year's resolutions, I love this time of year when there's an opportunity to slow down and think about what we really want in our lives and our goals for the next year. So kind of like New Year's resolutions. But the difference for me between the two is a resolution is kind of setting these big elaborate goals and you're gonna go in full strength and do this thing, and it usually comes with like a diet to meet that goal or a program to meet that goal or taking a course to meet that goal. And although there's nothing wrong with those things, they often can fall flat. I think we've all experienced that on some level throughout our lives where we thought that diet was going to fix our problems, right? And we thought that course we took was going to be the answer, and another year passes and the goal is still the same. Now we want to try again. So in this channel, I talk about growing food using aeroponics. I got the garage cleaned up. All the towers are in the garage. I will be growing indoors full time moving forward on some towers and outdoors as well in the season. But I also like to talk about simple living and natural living and just the whole lifestyle about why I grow food, because the how to grow food and growing the food is one thing, but these are actually just a tool to serve a greater purpose. These are a tool to reach a greater goal. And I got into growing a few years back this way. I've been a gardener for 20 years, and so growing food on the towers comes naturally to me. I understand plants, I understand their habits, I understand how they grow, so it was an easy transition for me to go from growing in the soil using many different methods to growing on the towers. I know that's not always the case for other people, so this platform is mostly education for those who want to grow their own food. But there is a greater mission, and I think a lot of times if our why is not big enough and the purpose behind growing our food is not big enough, then when growing our own food becomes challenging, it's easy to want to quit or want to give up because it's just about growing food. But for me, it's not about growing food at all. It's actually about providing my family with the freshest, most nutrient dense, least amount of toxins possible that I can bring into our home. And this is how I found to do that. So today I want to just share some more of my big picture, a little bit of my story, and then share some of the tools I have found to be the most helpful in going from a desire to live a healthier lifestyle, predominantly plant-based, to actually putting that into action and being able to step away from dieting cycles and failed programs and all of those things that just don't seem to work. So a little bit about my story, and I'm not going to get too much into this video. I do share my story in my free ebook. So if you want to download that, there is a link to my store, and in my storefront you can find all sorts of freebies as well as products I can recommend and the things I talk about on this channel. I put all of those links in my storefront. So you can find all of that there if you want more details. But basically I had health issues and wasn't able to find solutions through the modern systems for that. Ultimately sought out how to reverse some of those on my own, and did it through initially a raw vegan diet and then just changing my overall lifestyle to be a plant-based lifestyle. I went vegetarian at 14 years old. I didn't like meat when I was a kid. I remember I grew up very much an 80s and 90s kid where McDonald's and fast food was not a thing when I was little, and then it became very much a thing in the small town I lived in. And I remember my mother taking us to get burgers, and I would crack the window and slip the hamburger patty out the window because I just didn't like meat. So I've always had an affinity towards plants. I love plants. I love growing plants. I love eating plants. They make me so happy. And I have a natural understanding of plants. They just bring me a lot of joy. But throughout those years, I didn't really understand. And because of my age, it wasn't a prevalent thing. We didn't even have the internet, so I'm gonna date myself there, right? It's not like we had all these resources like we do today. So I ate a very unhealthy vegetarian diet. I've eaten an unhealthy vegan diet. Throughout the years, I tried to go back to eating meat and becoming a homesteader and growing our own chickens and doing that whole thing, and decided that was just definitely not for me. And ultimately, just through slowly educating myself, came to find the answers that work for my overall health and wellness, both mental, physical, and the whole thing, and have allowed me to live where I don't have to do diets and I don't have to follow certain programs in order to maintain my weight and live a healthy lifestyle. Now, it's not perfect. There are times when I want to slim down, I want to make healthier choices. I completely fail and go on a potato chip binge, right? We're only human. But I have found that understanding things, and I'm going to get into those things in a minute, makes the difference, because diets can work and programs can work, but usually it's a very small percentage of people who continue to stay on those and it works for. The statistics show that most people either gain the weight back or never really lose a lot of weight to begin with. The ones that do, that very, very, very small percentage, it's not because the diet was the solution. It's because they use the diet as a tool to change something that stuck, and they changed their lifestyle habits. So those are the kind of things I like to try and focus on. How can I change my lifestyle habits so that I'm filling my life with positive, healthy things instead of trying to get on some kind of program where I'm ordering like processed food to make sure I have calorie restrictions, or some of these other diets that are just very, very restricting. And I personally don't think they're very healthy either. That's just my personal opinion. Definitely not long-term. Even things like keto definitely have advantages, but those are not diets that are proven to be healthy long-term. And actually they have been proven to cause a lot of harm long-term, especially for women who are premenopausal and women over 40. So it's something we have to be very careful of as women. Obviously, this is all just my opinion based on my research and the things I have studied and understand. You may have a totally different opinion. Totally fine. I believe in food autonomy. I don't force my kids to eat the way I do. I do bring clean food into the house and try and build a pantry from scratch and make all our meals from scratch. But I have teenagers, and let me tell you, they find ways to get junk that makes me want to crawl out of my skin. But that's another subject. So I'm going to share just a few of my best tips, I think, for 2024. And these are the things that have worked for me over the years. So these are not the things I plan to do as New Year's resolutions to meet a certain goal. These are the things I've done consistently for years that have allowed me to reverse a lot of health issues, get my health under control, maintain my weight, maintain my physical activity and health and mental well-being and all of those things. So these are my tried and true methods and resources, and also just kind of share, what are my next year goals to take it a little bit further, because I do think we have to keep moving forward. And I like the idea of always getting 1% better, because that takes so much pressure off. Starting a diet where all of a sudden you're going to go from eating one way to eating a completely different restrictive diet, there's a lot of psychology involved in that, and I'll talk about that in a minute, that sets us up for failure. But if we can change the way we think about food and have some tools for that and some information and some resources, then it's like 1% every day is how we win, because we're getting 1% better at something, and that takes so much of the pressure and the fear off of it and allows us to move forward and create positive change. So you're gonna hear the towers have kicked on in the back. I'm growing some incredible foods. I am growing a wide variety of tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, dark leafy greens, light leafy greens, purple foods. Purple foods are loaded with anthocyanins, which are really beneficial. Lime green foods, dense greens, like kales and broccoli leaves, because I love the texture and the density of those. And then light greens and aromatic greens like arugulas and lettuce and all of those things. Lots of herbs, stinging nettle, beets. Beets are incredibly healthy for women's health. For men as well, but for women's health particularly. and just so many things. And when I plant food, and if you've watched my seed starting videos in the past, a lot of the food that I'm purchasing is for taste and texture, so our food tastes good, which is important, and for the health benefits of it, because we can add so much nutrition into our diet by really expanding our taste buds. And that's a learned skill that if you tried to plant out some of the things and you're just brand new to growing food on a tower, and you grow spicy wasabi mustards and stinging nettle and turnips and foods that you have never, and chervil, and foods that you have never consumed before. Even celery grown on a tower is very, very different than grocery store celery. Grocery store celery is very mild and almost flavorless. Celery on a tower is so potent. And each variety that I grow has different flavor profiles and can taste very different from plant to plant based on the variety. And that can be a new concept. So it's 1% better. So if you're brand new to tower gardening and you're ready to launch a new lifestyle of growing some of your own food, it might be that you learn how to grow some lettuce and then really get used to eating homegrown fresh lettuce that can taste very different versus store-bought, and then advance from there. It's that 1% instead of, I have seen people plant their towers out with all sorts of like Swiss chard and things, that the seeds that came with the tower, and then they don't like the food because they haven't been exposed to eating those kind of foods. So it does take a little while to transition into a new way of eating to advance our health and to really like expand out past what I'm gonna say is very nutrient dense, very flavorless foods, produce, very flavorless produce from the grocery store. I also have had a lot of experience with juicing. I've been juicing for over 10 years now. Has it been over 10 years? Yeah, over 10 years now. It was one of the initial steps to reversing some of my health issues, and I have found it to be one of the most successful things I have done over the past 10 plus years to maintain health. When I start to really struggle with my diet and how I'm feeling and inflammation and all of those things, it's when I step away from juicing that those things tend to ramp up and become a problem. So juicing is a consistent in my life. I don't do it every single day. I go through phases where I'm drinking gigantic green juices with apple and lemon and ginger, and then I'll burn out on those and I may take a couple of weeks off, or I may start to crave smoothies, and then I'll start to crave, right now I'm on a big citrus kick. I love juicing all things grapefruit with greens off the towers. But juicing has been a really significant way for me to maintain my health. I think a lot of it is because when we juice, we're cleansing our cells, so it's a way to detox. And so I'm constantly able to detox and get my inflammation in my body back into an anti-inflammatory state through those juices. It's really important too if you are on a weight loss journey, because fat is where we store a lot of toxins. So as you start to lose weight, you can feel really, really bad as those toxins release into your body. We lose fat actually through our breath. It's hard to think of it that way, but it actually breaks down and becomes gases. But those toxins don't break down, and sometimes we need to really focus on foods, green juices, or ways to bind all those toxins up and get them out of our body to help us feel better. If you change your diet and you start to lose a lot of weight, or you start to juice a lot and you are feeling kind of fluish, just know that's what's going on. I call it the healing crisis phase, where your body's just going to feel pretty bad. You can actually slow that down by eating different foods that kind of slow down that detox process so you don't feel as terrible. But just know that can be a side effect if you're new to eating a whole plant-based diet and start to get into juicing. That can absolutely happen. I have links to the juicer I recommend below. Juicers have advanced quite a bit since my first juicer. I remember kind of the old school juicers that were for the people back in the 70s that knew eating plant-based, a predominantly plant-based diet, whole foods diet, and we're juicing like that original generation and of like the first people to get into the health and wellness space long before the internet, before I even knew those people existed. That's where I started my juicing journey, is using some of those like all-star juicers. Juicers have advanced quite a bit and the price points come down significantly since my first juicing experience. And it's great because it's a lot more mainstream now, which means the products that are coming on the market are way better than what I initially used when I started juicing. They're easy to clean, they're easy to use, they work great at maintaining the nutrients in the juices. And that's been really fun to watch. I've watched the juicing industry evolve for many years now, and it's been really neat to see how many people are coming on board with juicing and making that a part of their lifestyle, and then how the industry as a whole is kind of feeding that in a really, really beneficial way. There are some terrible juicers out there that I wouldn't recommend, and there's some excellent ones. I will have a link below to my store again where you can see the juicer that I prefer if you're interested in. And then with juicing, there is no limit. Right here I've got wheatgrass sprouting because I'm doing some wheatgrass for juicing, but there are so many endless options for cleansing the body and repairing the body. There's so many books and resources out there. I will put a link below to a couple of my favorite. One of my favorites is Juicing for Life. I didn't bring that book in here, but that one's in there. So I'll put those resources below if you want to learn more about that as well. But I do think juicing is a huge tool. Now, I mastered that in prior years. Like I mentioned, I've been juicing for over 10 years. Doesn't mean I've been consistent. I've had times where I've gotten out of that habit and I've had to step back into it. I've had times where I've wanted to take breaks from it, and I think that's important to listen to our bodies. The more fruits and vegetables you eat and the more whole food plant-based diet you have, the more your body will start to tell you when it needs certain things. And that's a really cool thing. To salivate when you're hungry over lettuce is not something that is normal to most people. And I remember when I went on a raw vegan cleanse to try and begin to reverse some of the issues I was having, a friend who had done the same method told me, she's like, wait, you'll start to salivate when you look at lettuce or when you get hungry. And I was like, no way, that's weird. And it absolutely happened, and it still happens to this day. Like, I see healthy food, and when I get really hungry, I am like dreaming of what's on my towers. Like, this is what I'm craving. I'm not craving sweets and cakes and all those processed foods or takeout foods or pizza or whatever it is. Now, if I get away from eating this and I start to eat those other things, that can shift very, very quickly. Those foods are designed, processed foods are designed to make you crave them. That's the whole purpose. The whole reason they're designed is to make you crave them and to pull you away from the produce into the middle of the aisles so that you will buy those foods. And the reason being because those are the foods that companies make money on. They can't make money on broccoli. That's all subsidized through the government. It's a huge mess. They make money on the things in the middle of the aisles that stay good for years on end, that are loaded with preservatives. They're loaded with cheap and expensive food for the macro content, and then they are filled with all kinds of flavorings, natural and unnatural, and sugars and oils and fats that are all there for the sole purpose of making you crave them. The more I personally learn about how that system works, the more I don't want any part of it. Do we want to be someone's puppet in a game that's designed to feed wallets? Like, for me, it's so disgusting. I don't even want any part of it. I don't want anything to do with that. And it took understanding what's really going on in the grocery stores for me to get to that place and get to that place of anger and like disgust, to where those things are not even an option. Like, they're not an option. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes potato chips are an option. I am only human, right? But for the majority of the time, changing the way we think about food and our understanding of food and the systems, for me, has made a huge impact on living a simpler, healthier lifestyle easier. And that goes into the simple living too. I like to talk about simple living on this channel. You're not gonna see me in prairie dresses, baking bread very often, although I love a good prayer dress, and I make both sourdough bread and regular bread quite often. But when I'm talking about simple living, the same as I'm mentioning with a natural living lifestyle. It's just getting away from being programmed to think certain things are needed in our lives to make us happy. You know, and that sort of idea of, you know, if I get this thing, it's gonna make me happy. If my kitchen, like we're redoing our kitchen, we've been in this house 4 years. I don't even have an oven right now. It's sitting in front of me in this garage, and that's okay. Like, I've accepted that having a perfect kitchen and even an oven that works, which is kind of important, isn't foundational to my happiness. And so I can live a simple lifestyle without those things until I have the means and the time and the resources to fix them and be content in that whole process. And I often say, like, simple living is just a concept. It doesn't matter if you live in 3,000 square feet or 400. I have neighbors who live in literal sheds that have been converted into tiny houses. That's simple living. That is super simple living compared to how we live. But it's more about the heart issue around it. Like, are we seeking happiness in things? Are we waiting, like, if I get this, if I can do this, if my kitchen only look like this, then I'll be happy? Those are the things that I think pull us away from a simple lifestyle of contentment and kind of put us in that rat race. And so when I talk about simple living, it's more about growing my own food, making simple meals out of that food, being content with things in our space, not desiring bigger and better, and using my hands and my mind to accomplish things instead of just running off to the store to buy something. It's actually trying to step away from buying things and buying things used instead of going off to purchase something brand new. Those are my ideas of simple living that kind of tie into this. I want to talk about some resources that have been helpful for me on this journey. Like, information, knowledge is power, right? And I've watched others go through this journey in the same way. I had a loved one that for years, like 17 years, guys, I was screaming, what you eat matters. You know, healthy food matters. We need to be growing our own food. We need to get away from processed foods. The thought process was that it didn't matter. And a lot of people think that it doesn't matter what you eat and what you put into your body. And so I think until we kind of change that thinking, it makes it really difficult to actually change your lifestyle in a way that's going to help you reach those goals of having less weight, more emotional stability, feeling healthier in your body, having more energy, being able to exercise, all of those things. Reversing illnesses. A lot of the things that we deal with these days are man-made. We have a lot of issues, health issues, because of our actions. I have an injury in my hand. I need to seek some more advanced medical advice on this situation from a specialist that can help me deal with this situation. I can't fix this with broccoli. I've tried, trust me. This is something outside of my scope. But a lot of the health issues I did have that I was trying to seek modern help with was not able to fix with modern help, and was able to fix because they were lifestyle issues. They were lifestyle things that were causing me to be ill. And most of the things we're dealing with these days are because of our choices. And it's actually sadly become taboo to even say that, but I'm gonna say it. So let's dive into two of my absolute favorite books, and I wanna explain why. The first one I started with was this book right here. It's by Michael Greger, and Michael Greger created a series of books. This was the first one, and all of it was designed not to just state his opinion. I love to read opinion-biased books. You know, there's always someone out there that's going to tell you the thing you want to do is healthy for you. All we got to do is find that one person that says what we're doing is healthy, and we cling on to that. And I definitely love to read plant-based books that are super biased, because I'm super biased in that area, right? But he put this book together with thousands and thousands and thousands of resources. So everything is backed by studies, real studies, not fake studies, peer-reviewed quality studies to back the information that he's saying. And those are all listed in the book, which makes this book gigantic. And then he also has like huge websites online with all the resources as well. The cool thing with Michael Greger in these books